In the silent dust of what was once Mesopotamia lie the remnants of a civilization that gave the world its first cities, its first laws, and its first written words. These are the Sumerian tablets, impressions baked into clay, speaking to us from a chasm of 5,000 years. They are archives of a world now vanished, written in a language that stands utterly alone, an orphan tongue with no known relatives, no descendants. Its purpose, its very origin, remains one of history's most profound enigmas. Yet, with the lens of modern technology, we are beginning to decipher these ancient whispers. We are piecing together the fragments, and from the silence, a voice emerges. It tells the story of a king, a hero, a man who wrestled with gods and his own mortality. It is the story of Gilgamesh. This is not merely an old tale, it is the genesis of literature itself. Inscribed in the wedge-shaped script of cuneiform, the most complete version dates to the 3rd dynasty of Uruk around 2100 BCE. But its roots dig even deeper into scattered Sumerian poems that are centuries older still. For millennia, these tablets lay shattered and forgotten, until the mid-19th century, when archaeologists unearthed the ghost of a library from the ruins of Nineveh. Assembling them was a monumental puzzle, a narrative resurrected piece by painstaking piece. Even today, gaps remain, verses lost to the unforgiving march of time. At the heart of the epic stands Gilgamesh himself, a figure of impossible stature. He is described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, a composition of divine fire and mortal clay that sets him apart from all others. This is not the simple hero of later myths. He is a being of terrifying power, a king whose strength and appetites are so immense they threaten the very city he rules. He is a force of nature in human form, a demigod walking the earth, seemingly invincible. Driven by an insatiable hunger for renown, Gilgamesh was not a king content with his throne. He sought a glory that would outlast stone. This ambition led him and his companion on a perilous journey to the cedar forest, a sacred realm guarded by the monstrous Humbaba. There, in a battle of epic proportions, Gilgamesh proves his heroism, seeking to carve his name into eternity. But the true turning point of his life was not a victory, but a loss. It arrived with the death of his soul friend, Enkidu. Enkidu had been created by the gods as a rival, a wild man from the steppe meant to temper the king's arrogance. Yet, instead of enemies, they became inseparable brothers. In Enkidu, the god-king found his own humanity, and when Enkidu dies, something in Gilgamesh breaks. The grief is absolute, a raw wound that transforms his quest for fame into a desperate, terrified search for immortality. This new odyssey forces him to confront a truth more fearsome than any monster, that death is the shared destiny of all mortals. The king who had mastered the world could not master his own end. But was this demigod merely a phantom of myth, a literary invention? The line between legend and reality blurs when we consult another extraordinary artifact, the Sumerian King List. This ancient document is a chronology of rulers, stretching so far back into the mists of time that it records kings who reigned for thousands of years. And there, among the celestial reigns and mythic lineages, is a name, Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. The list grounds the epic hero in the soil of history, suggesting a real monarch whose deeds were so profound they became the seed of legend. The clay has crumbled, the empires have turned to dust, and the language is now silent. Yet the story of Gilgamesh endures. It survives not because of the monsters he fought or the walls he built, but because it is the first great record of the human condition. It is a story about the beautiful, fragile nature of friendship, the paralyzing sorrow of loss, and the universal, desperate struggle to find meaning in a finite life. It is the first time we see ourselves, our own fears and our own hopes, written down. And in that, the king who failed to find eternal life found a far more powerful kind of immortality. In the sun-scorched earth of ancient Mesopotamia, buried for millennia, lie the fragments of an extraordinary chronicle. Not an epic of gods and monsters, but something far more grounded, yet equally profound: a list. Known to us as the Sumerian King List, this sacred ledger of power, etched in cuneiform script upon clay tablets, purports to record the lineage of rulers from the very dawn of civilization. It is a document that blurs the line between time and eternity, a tapestry where gods and mortals are woven together.
This is where things get really interesting. What you're about to hear might explain why this was never meant to be discovered.
Their reigns measured in centuries, sometimes even millennia. This was not merely a record, it was the Sumerian conception of their own history, a sacred genealogy that legitimized the present by anchoring it to a divine and distant past. And there, among the procession of rulers, a name emerges from the clay, a name that echoes through the ages: Gilgamesh. His inclusion on this regal roster is a revelation of profound significance. This is not the Titan of legend, the slayer of the bull of heaven, but Gilgamesh, the king, fifth ruler of the first dynasty of Uruk. His presence here suggests a stunning possibility: that the towering figure of myth, the hero who journeyed to the ends of the earth in search of immortality, was once a man of flesh and blood, a historical sovereign who walked the streets of his city. The evidence does not rest on a single, fragile tablet. The King List is not a singular relic, but a foundational text, a cultural touchstone discovered in more than a dozen copies scattered across the Ruinamonstrates, its vital importance to Mesopotamian identity. It was their shared story, their undisputed line of succession. Beyond this royal register, other whispers of the historical Gilgamesh have survived the ravages of time. Fleeting, yet tantalizing, references appear on other artifacts. Cylinder seals, rolled across wet clay to mark ownership or authorized documents, bear his name. Votive inscriptions, dedicated in temples to curry favor with the gods, mention him. These archaeological breadcrumbs have been unearthed throughout the Mesopotamian heartland, clustering with telling frequency around the ancient metropolis of Uruk, the very seat of his power. Yet, these fragments offer a frustratingly incomplete portrait. They are the ancient equivalent of headlines without the story, brief acknowledgments of his existence that lack the intimate chronicles of his reign, his policies, or his personal life. They confirm his place in the world but fall silent on the details of his rule. Herein lies the great archaeological dilemma. We are left to navigate the murky confluence of two powerful rivers, the river of myth and the river of history. The task is to distinguish the man from the legend that grew around him, a challenge made immense by the absence of any royal annals or autobiographical accounts from his era. The puzzle of the real Gilgamesh is missing most of its pieces, leaving us to reconstruct a king from the shadow cast by a demigod. But the importance of this sparse evidence cannot be overstated. It transforms Gilgamesh from a mere literary creation into a figure anchored, however tenuously, in the soil of reality. He becomes a focal point through which we can understand how history, over generations of oral and written tradition, can be elevated into the timeless realm of myth. To truly comprehend the world Gilgamesh inhabited, one must look beyond the throne and the city walls. One must look to the heavens and to the underworld. For in the Mesopotamian cosmos, humanity was not alone. It was governed, judged, and sometimes tormented by a pantheon of awesome power, the Anunnaki. These were the celestial assembly, the A-listers of the divine realm whose decisions reverberated through the mortal world. In the earliest Sumerian traditions, they were often depicted as chthonic deities, judges of the dead presiding over the somber realm below. But as Sumerian culture gave way to the Akkadian and later Babylonian empires, these deities underwent a profound theological shift. The Akkadians adopted and elevated the Anunnaki, transforming them from underworld arbiters into cosmic potentates. They were no longer confined to the land of the dead, they now seized control of cosmic forces. They were the beings who decreed the fates of kings and empires, who played a direct role in the very genesis of the world and the creation of humankind. Their influence was absolute, their presence felt in the turning of the seasons, the flooding of the rivers, and the fortunes of war. This was the divine counsel before immortality he so desperately sought to overcome. The line between history and mythology is not a wall, but a veil. Through it, framework of the Anunnaki, which gave meaning to a world of uncertainty. What survives on these clay tablets is more than a list of names or a collection of tales. It is a testament not only to what was, but to what it meant to be human, standing in the shadow of giants, both mortal and divine. In the clay tablets of ancient Mesopotamia, etched in the wedge-shaped script of cuneiform, lies the story of a shadowy pantheon that held dominion over. They are not distant.
Stay with me, because what comes next has been hidden for a very long time. And only a few people know the truth.
Abstract deities. They are a celestial tribunal, a divine council whose deliberations shape the very course of the hero's journey. Their decrees are absolute, their judgment final, setting in motion the grand and tragic adventures that define a king's search for meaning. This divine authority extends to the very dawn of creation. In the Babylonian epic, the Enuma Elish, the Anunnaki are present at the birth of the cosmos. They are participants in the primordial struggles that bring order from chaos, establishing the foundations of the universe and decreeing the laws that would govern both the heavens and the earth. They are the architects of the cosmic order, their presence woven into the very fabric of existence. Yet their influence was not confined to the celestial or the mythological. For the people of Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki were profoundly and terrifyingly involved in the affairs of humanity. They were the arbiters of fortune, the unseen hands that raised and toppled kingdoms. It was from them that kingship was bestowed, a divine mandate that legitimized a ruler's power. They were the source of the land's fertility, the guarantors of the harvest, but also the wielders of famine and plague. Their curses capable of turning thriving cities into barren dust. They were the puppet masters of history, their will determining the outcome of battles and the longevity of empires. In their power, both creative and destructive, the ancient Mesopotamians saw a reflection of their own understanding of justice, morality, and the precarious nature of human civilization, forever subject to the whims of a higher, inscrutable power. Over centuries, a profound cosmological evolution occurred. These deities, once associated with the chthonic, earthbound realm, some even serving as judges in the underworld, began a slow ascent into the heavens. A number of the Anunnaki became inextricably linked with the great celestial bodies that charted the passage of time. The sun god, Shamash, became the embodiment of justice, his light exposing all truths. The moon god, Sin, measured the months with his waxing and waning, and the goddess Ishtar, a figure of love and war, became one with Venus, the brilliant morning and evening star. This was no mere rebranding, it was a transcendence. Their power, once rooted in the soil and shadows of Mesopotamia, now extended to the very mechanics of the cosmos. They became the governors of celestial motion, their movements across the night sky providing the foundation for the complex arts of astrology and divination through which humanity sought to understand its fate. Nowhere is this divine intervention more vividly chronicled than in the saga of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who was 2/3 god and 1/3 man. His journey begins not with a quest for treasure, but for the answer to the ultimate human question, how to conquer death. This obsession is ignited by his encounter with Utnapishtim the Faraway, the sole mortal to have cheated death. Utnapishtim recounts the story of a great flood, a cataclysm unleashed by a divine decree to annihilate mankind. But one god, Ea, the master of wisdom, whispered a secret on the wind, instructing Utnapishtim to build a great ark and preserve the seed of all living things. As a reward for saving life from the divine wrath, the Anunnaki granted him and his wife the one prize no other mortal could claim, immortality. This revelation sets Gilgamesh on a perilous path, a desperate attempt to wrest the secret of eternal life from the gods themselves. His journey is shadowed at every turn by divine machination. His greatest companion, the wild man Enkidu, was not born of woman, but molded from clay by the goddess Aruru. He was a divine counterweight, sent to temper the king's arrogance and challenge his power. Even love becomes a divine battlefield. When the goddess Ishtar offers herself to Gilgamesh and is met with his scornful refusal, her fury is absolute. She ascends to the heavens and demands that her father, Anu, unleash the bull of heaven, a creature of celestial rage, to trample the city of Uruk. The defiance of Gilgamesh and Enkidu reaches its apex in the sacred cedar forest. There, they confront its fearsome guardian, the monstrous Humbaba, a creature appointed by the great god Enlil himself. To slay this beast was not merely an act of heroism, it was an act of supreme sacrilege, a direct challenge to the established divine order. It was a declaration that mortal will could stand against the designs of the gods. For this transgression, the Anunnaki Council meets, and their judgment is swift. One of the two heroes must die. In the end, Gilgamesh fails in his quest for immortality. He returns to Uruk empty-handed, yet with a profound and sorrowful wisdom. He learns that the human condition is defined by its limits, that life's meaning is found not in defying mortality, but in the legacy one builds within
If you think you've seen everything, wait. What comes next will turn everything upside down.
it. The story of the Anunnaki and their tempestuous relationship with humanity is more than a collection of myths. It is a civilization's first great attempt to grapple with its own existence in a universe governed by immense and indifferent forces. The gods may have authored the laws of the cosmos, but it is in the human struggle against those limits, in the love, the grief, the defiance, and the ultimate acceptance, that the true story of civilization is written. Every step is a trial of sinew and spirit, a test not only of physical strength, but of the courage to face the unknown. And through it all, the king of Uruk is not alone. He communes with the divine, his pleas and questions carried on the desert wind to the ears of the gods. Chief among his celestial guides is Shamash, the sun god, the all-seeing eye in the sky. Shamash is more than a distant deity. He is a patron, a divine advisor who whispers counsel in dreams and illuminates the hero's path with his sacred light, offering sanction and support in the face of monstrous dread. Yet, the divine connection is also deeply personal, rooted in the bond of blood. Gilgamesh's own mother, the goddess Ninsun, watches from afar. Her interventions are not of cosmic strategy, but of maternal care. She interprets his omens, offers prayers for his safety, and provides the kind of profound, grounding guidance that anchors even a demigod to the world. It is a poignant reminder that even in this age of myth, where heroes walk with gods and battle creatures of legend, the counsel of a parent echoes with profound power. For what unfolds in this ancient epic is not merely a hero's pursuit of fame or eternal life. It is a profound exploration of the intricate, often fraught relationship.
Welcome to my channel. If you're fascinated by hidden truths, lost civilizations, and unsolved mysteries, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like so you don't miss what's coming next. Because what you're about to see will change everything.
Between humanity and its creators in the Mesopotamian worldview. Here, the gods are not remote, impassive observers. They are active, willful participants in the grand drama of mortal existence. They are the architects of destiny who can forge a companion from clay to temper a king's arrogance, the patrons who steer their chosen champions toward glory, and the vengeful powers who will unleash celestial fury when their pride is wounded. To truly understand the man, we must first understand his world. We must travel back in time, across nearly 5 millennia, to the soil of ancient Mesopotamia. The era is roughly 2,700 years. Before the Common Era, a pivotal moment in human history known as the Early Dynastic Period. This was a crucible of civilization, a revolutionary dawn when, for the first time, humanity began to gather in large, complex societies. Along the Fertile Crescent, city-states were rising from the earth, each a nucleus of innovation, power, and belief. On the banks of the mighty Euphrates River, On the banks of the mighty Euphrates River in what is now modern Iraq, its location was a blessing from the gods. The river was its lifeblood, nourishing vast fields of barley and date palms, while its position made it a nexus of commerce and ideas, a true powerhouse of culture and economy. It was, in essence, the world's first great city. Its reputation was built on wonders of architecture that defied the imagination of the age. Immense temple complexes, the ziggurats, clawed at the sky, their tiers serving as stairways for the gods to descend to earth, and encircling it all was the legendary wall of Uruk, a monumental testament to its king's ambition, a girdle of baked brick and bitumen so vast it was said to have been built by Gilgamesh himself. But Uruk's might was not only measured in brick and mortar. It was the paramount religious center of the land. It housed the principal temple of Inanna, the goddess of love, war, and political power, later known to the Akkadians as Ishtar. To be the seat of her worship was to be the sacred and secular capital, a declaration of divine favor that solidified the city's preeminence. This was a world where politics and piety were inextricably fused. At its zenith, Uruk was a teeming metropolis, its population swelling to tens of thousands, making it unquestionably one of the largest, if not the largest, urban center on the planet. And presiding over this sprawling, dynamic world was Gilgamesh. As king, or Lugal, he was the linchpin of his society. He was the shepherd of his people, the supreme arbiter of justice, the high priest who mediated with the gods, and the commander-in-chief who led his armies. His were the decisions that guided the intricate bureaucracy, managed the granaries that fed the masses, directed the sacred festivals that honored the heavens, and navigated the treacherous currents of diplomacy and warfare with rival city-states. The weight of the world's first civilization rested upon his shoulders. The story that has survived him is therefore more than the tale of a single king's adventures. It is a chronicle of the first urban man staring into the abyss of his own mortality, and in doing so, defining for all time what it means to be human. Beyond the veil of myth, that made his city, Uruk, a wonder of the ancient world. His legacy, etched in clay and stone, was one of both conquest and creation. Yet, when we pull back from the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, a startling pattern begins to emerge. From the stepped ziggurats reaching for the heavens to the silent, colossal pyramids of the Egyptian sands, and even across the ocean to the jungle-shrouded temples of the Maya, a structural language seems to connect them all. These immense undertakings, frequently aligned with breathtaking precision to celestial bodies and cosmic events, speak of an architectural and astronomical mastery that appears profoundly out of place. They demand a command of mathematics, engineering, and logistics that seems to defy their supposed technological era. The question, therefore, is not if they were built, but how. Was this a case of parallel evolution, of disparate cultures independently arriving at the same monumental conclusions? Or does this global echo hint at a shared blueprint, a single, advanced source of knowledge lost to time? This theme of anachronistic wisdom is not confined to architecture. In the archives of antiquity, from the cuneiform tablets of the Sumerians to the sacred verses of the Vedic Indians, we find scriptures containing astonishingly complex astronomical data. These ancient peoples charted the languid dance of the stars. They understood the concept of wandering planets, and some texts even hint at a heliocentric system, placing the sun at the center of all things. Were these staggering intellectual leaps the product of isolated genius, repeated again and again across the globe? Or was there a teacher, a guide, perhaps the figures they called the Anunnaki, leading them to these profound revelations? Mythology breathes life into this speculation. Across countless cultures, stories are told of divine or otherworldly beings who descended from the skies. In the Americas, legends describe gods arriving from the stars, bestowing upon humanity the secrets of civilization and advanced agriculture. In Africa, the Dogon people possess an impossible knowledge of the Sirius star system. Their sacred lore speaks in detail of its companion, a small, incredibly dense dwarf star completely invisible to the naked eye. It is a fact that modern astronomy would not confirm for millennia. Were these mere fables spun around the campfire, or were they encoded accounts of actual encounters with beings from beyond our world? The artifacts and symbols left behind only deepen the mystery. Consider the ubiquitous dragon, a creature revered and feared from the imperial courts of China to the frozen fjords of Europe. While its interpretation varies, common themes of immense power, divinity, and an association with the sky and cosmos persist. Were these powerful depictions inspired by the texts as the magical, terrifying forms of divine beasts? These patterns, these striking similarities woven through the tapestry of ancient cultures, open a Pandora's box of questions. Were our ancestors simply drawing from a shared well of human imagination, a collective unconscious that gives rise to parallel innovations and myths? Or do these threads point to something more tangible? An external, perhaps extraterrestrial influence that bridged continents and eras, sowing seeds of knowledge that would blossom into the very marvels we study and admire today. To search for answers, we turn our gaze to a civilization shrouded in an unnerving silence. In the fertile plains of the Indus Valley, nestled between modern-day Pakistan and India, one of history's most enigmatic societies once flourished. Rising around 3,300 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan, showcased a level of urban sophistication and meticulous organization that rivaled its mighty contemporaries in Egypt and Mesopotamia.
This is not the full story. The most important part is just beginning, and it changes everything we thought we knew.
Yet they left behind no grand monuments to kings, no tales of epic battles. They left only the ghost of a perfectly ordered world and a script we have yet to build for ourselves. Beneath the relentless sun of modern-day Pakistan, the silent ruins of the Indus Valley Civilization hold a profound and unsettling secret. Here, in the dust of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, amidst the ghosts of a people whose words we cannot read, archaeologists have unearthed a disquieting echo, a series of symbols and artifacts that resonate with the iconography of another, distant cradle of civilization, ancient Sumer. To draw lines between these two great cultures is to tread on speculative ground, yet the evidence that emerges from the baked earth demands our scrutiny. The cities themselves are a testament to a singular, the Indus Valley were masterpieces of urban planning. Wide, perfectly straight avenues intersect at precise right angles, forming an immaculate grid. Beneath these streets lies a feat of engineering that would not be rivaled for thousands of years. A complex, city-wide system of covered drains and sophisticated sanitation. This was not a world of chance, but one of order, of a master plan executed on a colossal scale. At the very heart of Mohenjo-Daro's citadel lies the Great Bath, a vast sunken edifice of waterproof brick. Its purpose still debated, though its ceremonial significance is almost certain. It is here and in the surrounding structures that the first clues appear. Etched into stone, stamped into metal, are symbols that seem alien to their context. Most prominent among them are motifs strikingly similar to the winged sun disk, a ubiquitous and powerful emblem of divinity and royalty in the Mesopotamian world, inextricably linked to the Anunnaki. Yet the most intimate and compelling whispers of this connection come not from grand structures, but from objects small enough to be held in the palm of a hand. Throughout the Indus Valley sites, countless small seals, carved meticulously from soapstone, have been recovered. These were the instruments of administration and identity for a literate, mercantile people. They depict a rich menagerie of animals, bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, but they also portray enigmatic figures and symbols that form the core of this mystery. Among this vast library of images, certain motifs stand apart. There are figures standing with an otherworldly authority or seated in solemn contemplation, whose postures and presentation mirror the divine stances of deities found half a world away in Sumerian reliefs. While the Indus script remains one of history's great unsolved puzzles, these silent images offer a tantalizing visual language. They have led scholars to posit a deep cultural or spiritual artery connecting the banks of the Indus with the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia. A shared heritage, perhaps, centered on the very same pantheon of mysterious sky-faring gods. One seal, above all others, demands our focus. Known to the world as the Pashupati seal, it depicts a figure seated in a yogic posture, an asana of perfect discipline and power. This being is surrounded by animals, earning the title Lord of the Beasts. But it is the figure's headpiece that arrests the imagination. A horned headdress, an emblem of divinity strikingly, almost impossibly, similar to those worn by the great gods of Sumer. This single artifact.
This is not the full story. The most important part is just beginning, and it changes everything we thought we knew.
Has launched 1,000 theories, a potent symbol of a deity or a spiritual master revered in two of antiquity's most advanced cultures. The conduit for such an exchange is not entirely unknown. We know the Harappans were master mariners and merchants. Their goods, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and precious timbers, found their way to the bustling ports of Sumer. It is entirely plausible, even probable, that along these ancient trade routes, more than mere commodities were exchanged. With the cargo came stories, myths, and cosmologies. The beliefs that shaped one civilization could have easily bled into the consciousness of another, carried on the lips of sailors and merchants across the Arabian Sea. Did the inhabitants of the Indus Valley possess their own version of the Anunnaki, a tradition adapted and integrated into their unique worldview? Or are these startling similarities nothing more than coincidence, the convergent evolution of the human spirit's search for meaning, expressed in a shared symbolic language? The definitive proof remains buried, locked away in a script that refuses to yield its secrets. The sands of time guard the truth, but the pursuit of answers continues. The seals offer their enigmatic gaze, reminding us that the great rivers of ancient history may have flowed from a single, distant, and perhaps unknowable source. From the sun-scorched sands of Mesopotamia, a whispered theory travels westward, fringe hypothesis that refuses to fade, a question that echoes in the silent tombs of pharaohs and the shadow of monolithic temples. While the story of the Anunnaki is most deeply etched into the clay tablets of Sumer, a compelling narrative suggests their influence did not end at the Euphrates, but reached across deserts to shape the very foundations of ancient Egypt. In the heart of this enduring civilization, a pantheon of gods held sway over every aspect of life and death. Ra, the sun god, who sailed his bark across the sky. Osiris, the lord of the underworld. His devoted wife Isis, the mistress of magic, and Anubis, the jackal-headed guide of souls. Their stories were the bedrock of a culture that lasted for 3 millennia. But what if these divine figures, so central to the Egyptian identity, were not native to the Nile at all? What if they were simply different masks for the same powerful beings who descended from the heavens in Sumer? The argument begins not with text, but with stone. The Giza Plateau stands as a silent, mathematical testament to a profound mystery. The Great Pyramid, a mountain of manufactured stone, is composed of an estimated 2.3 million blocks, some weighing upwards of 80 tons, all assembled with a celestial precision that continues to baffle modern engineering. Its alignment to the cardinal points is near perfect, its internal shafts pointing to specific constellations with an astronomer's accuracy. The official narrative holds that this was the work of bronze tools and human muscle alone, but the question lingers, suspended in the dry desert air. Could a civilization in its relative infancy achieve such a feat without a guiding hand? Proponents of the Anunnaki connection argue that this is the smoking gun, a technological fingerprint left by advanced beings who understood cosmic geometry and gravitational engineering on a scale we are only now beginning to comprehend. Beyond the stone and mortar, the parallels are woven into the very fabric of myth and knowledge. The Sumerian accounts describe the Anunnaki as bestowing the gifts of civilization upon mankind: agriculture, law, and astronomy. In Egypt, it was the gods, particularly Thoth, who were credited with teaching humanity the arts of writing, medicine, and magic. The knowledge was a gift from the divine. This theme of celestial tutelage is a powerful, resonant chord played in both cultures. We see it in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, an intricate guide for the soul's journey through the afterlife. Its spells and incantations, its focus on judgment, resurrection, and the soul's relationship with the stars, find haunting echoes in the Sumerian epics of Gilgamesh and the tales of Inanna's descent into the underworld. Life, death, and the promise of a return from the void, framed by the eternal dance of the cosmos, are obsessions common to both peoples. Then there is the iconography, the way these beings were seen and recorded. In both Sumerian reliefs and Egyptian frescoes, the divine is depicted as larger than mortal man, beings of immense stature and authority. They are almost always shown wearing elaborate and unique headdresses or crowns, from the horned caps of the Anunnaki to the double crown of the pharaohs. They hold scepters, staffs, and the mysterious Ankh, symbols of power and life. Speculation runs rampant that these were not mere symbolic regalia. Could the staffs have been technological tools, the headdresses communication devices, the Ankh a representation of a power source? In this light, the ancient art ceases to be simple worship and becomes a potential technical manual, its meaning lost to the passage of ages. Perhaps the most profound link is the concept of kingship itself. In Egypt, the pharaoh was no mere ruler. He was Horus incarnate, a living god on earth, the sacred bridge between the mortal and the divine. This mandate to rule was not won by conquest alone. It was a divine right, an inheritance from the gods themselves. This mirrors, with startling clarity, the Sumerian belief that kingship was lowered from heaven by the Anunnaki. In both civilizations, the ruling class was seen as a hybrid lineage, a dynasty infused with the blood of the gods, tasked with managing humanity on their behalf. And yet, for every thread that seems to connect these two worlds, another unravels under scrutiny. Correlation, as the axiom reminds us, does not imply causation. Mainstream scholarship points to the vast and undeniable differences in language, religious practice, and burial customs. They argue that such parallels, the worship of sky gods, the idea of divine lawgivers, the construction of massive monuments, are not proof of a shared origin, but rather the products of a shared human experience. They are archetypes that arise naturally as any society grapples with the fundamental questions of existence, power, and the afterlife. The pyramids, they contend, were a magnificent but entirely human achievement. The myths, a human attempt to explain the world around them. The truth may be that we seek patterns where there are none, projecting a single, unified story onto the disparate and complex tapestry of our own past. The allure of the Anunnaki in Egypt is the allure of a secret history.
Stay with me, because what comes next has been hidden for a very long time, and only a few people know the truth behind it.
And unifying theory for the mysteries of antiquity. Whether it is a forgotten chapter of our story or a modern myth, it forces us to look again at the silent gaze of the Sphinx and to wonder. The answer may not lie in proving who they were, but in understanding why, after millennia, we still feel compelled to search for their footprints in the sand. In the sun-scorched lands where two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, carve a path through the dust of millennia, a story began. This is the land once known as Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, and it was here, in what is now modern-day Iraq, that the Sumerians ignited the very idea of civilization. Out of the reeds and the river mud, they built not just cities, but a new way for humanity to exist. Their legacy is not merely a chapter in a distant past, it is woven into the very fabric of our world. Long before the pharaohs raised their pyramids against the Egyptian sky, by 4000 BCE, the people of Sumer were already etching their thoughts into clay. They were charting the heavens, erecting monumental architecture, and conceiving of a cosmos populated by powerful, often capricious, gods. Their world was not a unified empire, but a constellation of fiercely independent city-states, each a microcosm of ruled by a priest-king, a mortal shepherd for an immortal divine patron. Perhaps their most transformative gift to the future was the invention of writing. They called it cuneiform, a script of elegant, wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay with a reed stylus. These tablets were not just for merchants tracking grain or kings issuing decrees. They were the vessel for law, for poetry, for the first great work of human literature. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, we find a story that predates Homer's epics by more than 1,000 years. It is a profound exploration of friendship, the hubris of power, and the universal, agonizing human quest for immortality, a narrative that speaks to us across the ages with an astonishingly familiar voice. Religion was the axis around which the Sumerian world turned. Their pantheon was vast, a family of gods and goddesses who governed the rising of the sun, the flooding of the rivers, and the fertility of the soil itself. To honor these deities, they built ziggurats, colossal stepped pyramids that dominated.
Most people stop watching right here. But if you continue, you'll discover something almost no one knows.
The flat landscape. These were not simply places of worship. They were man-made mountains, stairways to the heavens, designed to bridge the chasm between the mortal and the divine. They also served as the administrative and economic hearts of the cities, storehouses for wealth and centers of power. The Sumerian economy was a marvel of ingenuity. While the rich alluvial soil yielded bountiful harvests, their true genius lay in invention. They were among the first to harness the power of the wheel, not, as one might assume, for chariots of war, but for the potter's craft, allowing for the mass production of ceramics for storage and trade. They devised intricate systems of weights and measures, creating a common language for commerce that facilitated trade networks stretching far beyond their own borders. It was the codification of trust, the birth of a structured economy. Yet this cradle of innovation was also a crucible of conflict. Life in Sumer was a precarious balance. The city-states, vying for control of precious water and arable land, frequently clashed. Great fortified walls rose around their settlements, testaments to an age of escalating warfare. The era of the priest-king gave way to that of the warrior-king, as military prowess became as vital as divine favor. The political landscape was in constant flux, a relentless ebb and flow of power as one city rose to prominence, only to be eclipsed by a rival. Fragmented political world made them vulnerable to more unified powers. Over centuries, they were conquered and assimilated by successive empires, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians. Their language faded from common use, their cities crumbled, buried by the very earth from which they had emerged. But they did not vanish. Their conquerors became their students, adopting their script, their gods, and their scientific knowledge. The innovations of Sumer, in governance, law, timekeeping, and technology, became the bedrock upon which subsequent civilizations were built. The tale of Sumer is a powerful reminder that a culture's true immortality lies not in its monuments of stone, but in the endurance of its ideas. Their civilization may have turned to dust, but the questions they first etched into clay continue to be asked by us, their distant and unknowing heirs. Etched into sun-baked clay, buried for millennia beneath the dust of ancient Mesopotamia, lies a story. It is a story of kings and cities, of agriculture and astronomy, the very cradle of our civilization. But within the wedge-shaped impressions of this lost language, one scholar believed he had found something more. A narrative so profound, it threatened to rewrite the origins of humanity itself. His interpretations, born from a lifetime of linguistic dedication, would ignite a firestorm of debate that continues to burn across the world. The man was Zechariah Sitchin. Born in Azerbaijan and raised in the historic crossroads of Palestine, his mind was forged in a crucible of ancient cultures and languages. This unique upbringing was not merely biographical detail, it was the key that would unlock the deepest secrets of the past. Fluent in a constellation of modern and ancient tongues, he possessed a rare ability to hear the echoes of forgotten conversations. He turned this formidable skill to the most enigmatic of scripts, cuneiform, the intricate, reed-pressed language of the Sumerians. For years, he meticulously deciphered these tablets, not as simple myths or allegories, but as historical records. And from this deep dive into the dawn of time, Sitchin proposed a series of ideas as intriguing as they were groundbreaking. Central to his work was a radical reinterpretation of the Sumerian pantheon. The great deities, known as the Anunnaki, were not ethereal spirits or symbolic forces of nature. In Sitchin's translation, they were beings of flesh and blood, extraterrestrial visitors who had journeyed to Earth from a distant, undiscovered world. He gave this world a name, drawn directly from the texts: Nibiru, a rogue planet locked in a vast elliptical path, swinging through our inner solar system only once every 3,600 years. According to Sitchin's reading, these celestial travelers, the Anunnaki, did not come as conquerors or explorers in the conventional sense. They came on a desperate mission. They came for gold, not for wealth, but for survival. This precious element, he claimed, was essential to repairing the rapidly deteriorating atmosphere of their home world. Sitchin's interpretation paints a vivid, almost cinematic picture of their arrival. Upon finding Earth rich in the resource they so desperately needed, the Anunnaki leaders faced a problem. The labor was too arduous. Their solution, as Sitchin translated it, was an act of breathtaking cosmic intervention. They took the native hominins then walking the plains of Africa and, through sophisticated genetic modification, upgraded them. They engineered a new species. A hybrid workforce enetic event, he argued, was the sudden and inexplicable emergence of Homo sapiens. An audacious claim suggesting that our very DNA might bear the signature of these star-faring beings. But their influence did not end with our creation. Sitchin posited that the great leaps forward in human history, the birth of agriculture, the establishment of complex laws, the charting of the heavens, were not entirely our own. The Anunnaki, he proposed, acted as our first teachers, imparting knowledge that accelerated human progress at an unprecedented rate, transforming us from primitive hunter-gatherers into the architects of civilization. Further deepening the mystery, Sitchin explored the startling correlations between the Anunnaki tales and the foundational stories of other ancient cultures. He drew direct parallels between the Sumerian accounts and the scriptures of the Hebrew Bible. The Epic of the Great Flood, for instance, is detailed with astonishing similarity in the Epic of Gilgamesh, centuries before it appears in the Book of Genesis. Was this mere coincidence, a shared mythological archetype? Or was it, as Sitchin believed, the fragmented but persistent memory of a real event, an experience shared by a young humanity under the watch of their celestial patrons? Naturally, such theories were met with profound skepticism from the bastions of mainstream archaeology and linguistics. Scholars argued that his translations were flawed, his interpretations based on forced connections and a misunderstanding of Sumerian grammar and metaphor. Yet the power of his narrative could not be denied. Sitchin's work has spawned a global subculture of inquiry, fueling countless books, documentaries, and fervent discussions that bridge the chasm between ancient mythology and the modern search for extraterrestrial intelligence. In "'Tis Secure", he offered a powerful and enchanting lens through which to view our most distant past. He compelled us to look again at the stories we thought we knew, to question the very foundations of our history, and to wonder if, in the silent expanse of the cosmos, we have
This is where things get really interesting. What you're about to hear might explain why this was never meant to be discovered.
ever truly been alone. Etched into tablets of baked clay, buried for millennia beneath the dust of empires, lies a message. It is a story from a world lost to memory, a communication from a king who believed himself part god, intended not for his own time, but perhaps for ours. In an age of relentless forward momentum, we often cast a dismissive glance backward, viewing the architects of our world as primitives. We question their wisdom, blind to the echoes of their triumphs and their warnings, which resound from these ancient fragments. The narrative is that of Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Uruk, and his wild companion, Enkidu. It is a sprawling, visceral account of humanity's first, and perhaps greatest, obsessions. The desperate search for eternal life, the profound bonds of friendship that make a mortal life worth living, and the devastating consequences of hubris when a man dares to challenge the gods. Within its verses, we find the framework for myths that would shape civilizations yet to come. Here, in stunning detail, is the story of a great flood, a chosen man, a vessel built to preserve life, a tale that predates the biblical account of Noah by 1,000 years, a generalization drawn directly from the source. The story's reemergence began in the middle of the 19th century, a period of fervent rediscovery when the West turned its gaze to the cradle of civilization. This was a land known to antiquity as Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent nestled between the life-giving Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a territory that largely corresponds to modern-day Iraq. This was not merely a landscape, but a crucible. Here, in cities whose names still evoke a sense of primordial power, Uruk, Babylon, humanity first conceived of the metropolis, of codified law, of the written word. The rich alluvial soil and the engineered waterways supported societies of unprecedented complexity. The cuneiform tablets speak not only of gods and heroes, but of the vital, earthly work of clearing the silt from the great rivers, bending nature to the will of civilization to perfect the art of irrigation. It was into this buried world that a British archaeologist, Austen Henry Layard, ventured in the year 1849. While excavating the vast, sun-scorched mounds near the modern city of Mosul, he unearthed the ghost of a metropolis, the ancient city of Nineveh, once a formidable center of politics, culture, and trade for the mighty Assyrian Empire. Amidst the ruins of a grand palace, Layard made a discovery that would rewrite history. He had found the library of Ashurbanipal, the last great king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. It was not a library of papyrus or parchment, but a repository of a civilization's soul, inscribed on tens of thousands of clay tablets. Dating to the 7th century before the Common Era, this trove of knowledge was a time capsule. Its wedge-shaped cuneiform script chronicled the history, the science, the religious beliefs, and the literature of Assyria. It was here, among royal decrees and astrological omens, that scholars pieced together the shattered fragments of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Yet even as formal archaeology uncovered these texts, other, older stories persisted. Whispers among local traditions, oral histories that defy conventional explanation, spoke of the colossal ancient fortresses of the region. Structures so immense they were said to have been built in a single day and a single night, not by human hands, but by beings who descended from the heavens. As each fragment is translated, the tapestry grows richer, weaving together history, mythology, and a profound philosophy. The message left by the ancient kings is not a simple cipher. It is the story of ourselves. It is a cautionary tale about the pursuit of power, a celebration of love and loss, and a stark reminder that our struggle with mortality is the one timeless thread that connects all of humanity. The voices from the clay do not offer easy answers. They ask the eternal questions, compelling us to listen not to the secrets of the gods, but to the enduring wisdom of our own past. In the dust-choked ruins of ancient Nineveh, a quest for treasure took an unexpected turn. The British explorer Austen Henry Layard, driven by the promise of golden artifacts and monumental sculptures, was digging into the earth, hoping to unearth the riches of the Assyrian Empire. Instead, his shovels struck something far more precious. Not gold, but clay. Room after room revealed shelves stacked with tens of thousands of brittle, inscribed tablets. He had not found a treasure chamber, but a library, the Great Library of King Ashurbanipal. It was a discovery made entirely by chance, a moment of pure serendipity that would rewrite human history. The sheer scale of the find was staggering. An estimated 30,000 individual tablets, a silent testament to a civilization that revered the written word. These were not the idle jottings of merchants or the simple tallies of bureaucrats. The scribes who meticulously pressed their style into wet clay were conduits for a higher power, dutifully recording the words dictated to them by their lord, their master, or their god. Here was the preserved knowledge of a world lost to time, but it was locked away in a script of baffling complexity. This ancient writing, known as cuneiform, was a constellation of wedge-shaped marks. For millennia, it had been the lingua franca of power and poetry across Mesopotamia, used by the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians. But by the mid-19th century, its meaning was lost, its secrets guarded by the silence of the clay. The challenge to unlock this forgotten language fell to a new generation of Inti's daring. Rawlinson's quest for understanding led him to a remote cliffside in modern-day Iran, to a monumental carving known as the Behistun inscription. Commissioned by the Persian king Darius the Great, it was a triumphal declaration etched into the sheer
This is not the full story. The most important part is just beginning.
rock face, hundreds of feet above the ground. Crucially, Darius had proclaimed his victory in 3 different languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. The Old Persian script had been largely deciphered, providing the key. By painstakingly comparing the known text with the intricate cuneiform of the Babylonian version, Rawlinson and his contemporaries began to pry open the door to the past. Risking his life, dangling from ropes to transcribe the ancient characters, he cracked the code. By the 1850s, the monumental effort bore fruit. The cuneiform script yielded its secrets, and scholars could finally begin the slow, arduous process of translating the vast collection from Ashurbanipal's library. Our earliest translations date from this period, making even our initial understanding of these texts a historical artifact in its own right. As they worked, a coherent and enthralling narrative began to emerge from a specific set of 12 tablets. Across the centuries, every scholar who has studied them has found the same hauntingly familiar story. They had discovered one of the oldest known works of literature, a foundational epic of humanity, the story of Gilgamesh. 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. His awesome strength and profound wisdom made him a titan among men, but his power was corrupted by an arrogant and oppressive nature. He ruled without restraint, and his people, suffering under his tyranny, cried out to the heavens for relief. The gods heard their pleas. In response, they fashioned a counterpart to the king, a wild man named Enkidu, who was born of the wilderness and lived in perfect harmony among the animals. This juxtaposition is the very heart of the epic's beginning. Enkidu, the embodiment of natural innocence, stands in stark contrast to Gilgamesh, the symbol of a sophisticated yet corrupting urban civilization. Their inevitable confrontation would lead not to simple victory or defeat, but to a profound friendship that would carry them through epic trials, a battle with the fearsome monster Humbaba, a defiant rejection of the goddess Ishtar, and ultimately, a desperate, heartbreaking quest for immortality itself. The story, etched in clay over 4,000 years ago, speaks to us still. It is a mirror reflecting our own struggles with power, friendship, loss, and the eternal, agonizing question of what it means to be mortal. In the dust of Nineveh, Layard sought the treasures of kings, but what he found was the treasure of humanity itself, the first great story ever written, a reminder that our deepest fears and most profound hopes have not changed since the dawn of civilization. In the wildlands beyond the great city of Uruk, a figure moved with the gazelles, his hair uncut, his body a testament to the untamed earth. He was Enkidu, a man of nature, innocent of civilization. To tame this raw power, a temple servant, the courtesan Shamhat, was dispatched from the city. Over 7 days and 7 nights, she introduced him not merely to human touch, but to the very fabric of society. To cooked bread, the food of mortals, and to strong ale, which made the heart sing. she clothed his wild form, transforming him from a creature of the steppe into a man destined for a greater stage. This profound metamorphosis prepared him for the encounter that would define his existence and echo through the ages. His path led him to Uruk and to its king, Gilgamesh, 2/3 god, 1/3 man, a ruler of immense power and crushing arrogance. Their initial confrontation, a clash of titans in the city square, did not end in death, but in a startling recognition. In each other, they found their...
Welcome to my channel. If you're fascinated by hidden truths, lost civilizations, and unsolved mysteries, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like so you don't miss what's coming next. Because what you're about to...
Their equal, their missing half. A bond was forged, a friendship so powerful it would challenge the gods themselves. Together, they sought a legacy worthy of their strength, embarking on a perilous journey to the forbidden cedar forest. There, in that sacred, shadowed realm, they were to confront its guardian, the monstrous Humbaba, a being of terrifying power appointed by the great god Enlil to protect the wood. The battle was ferocious, the earth shaking with their struggle. Humbaba, with his 7 auras of terror, was a formidable foe, but the combined might of Gilgamesh and Enkidu proved greater. They felled the beast, and with it, the sacred cedars, an act of supreme defiance. But this victory was not a triumph, it was a transgression. In their hubris, they had trespassed on divine territory and destroyed a servant of the gods. Their glorious return to Uruk was short-lived, for the heavens themselves had been angered. The divine council decreed that a price must be paid, and as punishment for their sacrilege, Enkidu, the wild man who became a brother, was condemned to die. Enkidu's passing was no swift release. It was a slow, agonizing descent, a wasting sickness sent from the gods that turned the mightiest of men to dust. For Gilgamesh, watching his friend fade was a cataclysm. The hero who had faced down monsters was now confronted by an enemy he could not fight, death itself. Grief hollowed him out, but beneath the sorrow, a deeper, more primal emotion took root: terror. The chilling realization that he too would one day become nothing but clay and memory drove him into the wilderness, not as a king, but as a desperate wanderer, seeking the one secret that mattered, the key to eternal life. His quest became a legend, a journey beyond the edges of the known world, across lethal waters and through gates of darkness guarded by scorpion beings. He sought the one mortal who had cheated death, a man named Utnapishtim, the sole survivor of a world-destroying deluge, who had been granted immortality by the gods. When Gilgamesh finally reached him at the ends of the earth, he found not a mighty warrior, but an ancient, weary man. It was here that Gilgamesh heard a story that would shake the foundations of human history. Utnapishtim recounted how the gods, in their capricious anger, had resolved to wipe out humanity with a great flood. But one god, Ea, had whispered a warning through a reed wall, instructing Utnapishtim to build a colossal boat, an ark, and to load it with his family and the seed of all living things. The tale he told, of a devastating storm and a world drowned beneath the waves, bears an astonishing, almost verbatim resemblance to the much later biblical account of Noah. Scholars now posit that this Mesopotamian epic, etched in clay a millennium before the Book of Genesis was compiled, may be the original source of the flood myth, a shared cultural memory of a cataclysm that haunted the ancient Near East. Yet, for all his searching, Gilgamesh failed to obtain his prize. Utnapishtim offered him a chance at immortality, a simple test to stay awake for 7 nights, but the hero, exhausted by his journey, immediately fell into a profound sleep. A magical plant that could restore youth was found, only to be stolen by a serpent as he bathed. The universe itself seemed to conspire against his ambition. He returned to Uruk empty-handed, with no secret to eternal life. In this, the Epic of Gilgamesh diverges profoundly from the heroic tales of the ancient Greeks. While Homer's epics explore heroism and the gods, they are primarily concerned with earthly glory, with achieving a fame that outlasts death. Gilgamesh's quest is far more modern, more existential. It is a raw, internal struggle against the futility of the human condition itself. He does not seek to be remembered, he seeks to not end. His ultimate failure becomes his greatest lesson. As he stands before the towering walls of his own city, Uruk, he finally understands. Utnapishtim had told him that the secret to life was not in its endless continuation, but in accepting its transient nature. True immortality is not found in cheating death, but in the legacy one leaves behind, in the children raised, the culture built, the great walls that protect a people. The quest to live forever had ended with the wisdom to live well, a journey not to escape mortality, but to finally and fully embrace it. From the dust of ancient Mesopotamia, a name echoes through the millennia: Gilgamesh. His story, etched onto clay tablets, is a cornerstone of human literature, a tale of heroism, friendship, and the bitter search for immortality. Yet, behind the myth, a compelling theory suggests a foundation of truth. It posits that Gilgamesh was not a mere legend, but a historical king who reigned over the great city-state of Uruk around 2700 BCE. The evidence for this claim is tantalizing. Chief among these artifacts is the Sumerian King List, a remarkable document that chronicles the rulers of Sumer. There, among the semi-mythical figures, is a king named Gilgamesh, said to have ruled Uruk for an astonishing 126 years. While the epic narrative clearly embellishes his life with divine parentage and monstrous foes, it is entirely possible that these stories were inspired by the real deeds of a powerful monarch, his legacy magnified and mythologized with each passing generation. This is the fluid boundary where history dissolves into legend, where the memory of a man is transformed into the archetype of a hero. For centuries, our understanding of his epic was fragmented. But as archaeologists sifted through the sands of time, new pieces of the puzzle emerged from the ruiners to fill in narrative gaps, clarify ambiguities, and piece together a more complete version of the story. These discoveries have revealed that the epic was not a static text, but a living narrative. Variations found across different regions and periods show a story in flux, reflecting the cultural and philosophical currents of the time. Some versions emphasize
Stay with me, because what comes next has been hidden for a very long time, and only a few people know the truth behind it.
Gilgamesh's divinity more than others. Certain passages highlight different moral lessons, shaping the king's journey to suit new audiences. This process of reinterpreting ancient texts is the very heart of our quest to understand the past. But what if the gods were not gods, and the myths were not myths, but a distorted chronicle of an almost unbelievable historical event? A controversial but comprehensive narrative, champig from the same well of Sumerian texts, global mythology, and speculative theory, it presents a multifaceted explanation for humanity's origins, one that begins not on Earth, but in the cold, silent depths of space. The theory speaks of an ancient galactic war, a cataclysm that created waves of what could only be described as space refugees. At the heart of this interpretation is a group known as the Anunnaki and their desperate, singular need for one specific element: gold. According to this framework, the Anunnaki hailed from a wandering homeworld, Nibiru. Their planet was dying, its atmosphere eroding under the bombardment of cosmic radiation. Gold, this theory posits, possessed unique properties vital for their survival. It was not a currency or a symbol of wealth, but a technological necessity. This idea aligns with the interpretations of Zecharia Sitchin, who argued that the Anunnaki intended to pulverize the gold into a fine powder and disperse it into their upper atmosphere. This would create a protective shield, a delicate, shimmering veil reflecting harmful radiation and stabilizing their fragile environment. Their cosmic search led them to a small blue world, rich in resources and teeming with life: Earth. Here, they identified vast deposits of the precious metal they so desperately needed. They established extensive, industrial-scale mining operations, a global enterprise with a singular focus. The epicenters of this ancient industry, the theory suggests, were located in southern Africa, a region whose geology holds some of the planet's deepest secrets. Archaeological discoveries have unearthed ancient gold mines in this very region, dating back tens of thousands of years, far earlier than conventional history suggests organized mining began. One of the most notable of these locations is the Barberton Greenstone Belt in South Africa. This is not just another geological formation, it is one of the oldest and best preserved rock sequences on the entire planet, a library of terrestrial history dating back over 3 billion years. And within this ancient stone, we find some of the oldest gold mines known to. The question becomes not whether there was ancient mining, but who precisely was doing the work. Here, the two streams of interpretation converge. The story of Gilgamesh shows us how a historical king can be elevated to the status of a god. The Anunnaki theory asks us to consider the reverse, that the figures we have long called gods were in fact physical, tangible beings whose advanced technology was indistinguishable from magic to our primitive ancestors. Are these tales merely the allegories of a pre-scientific people grappling with the profound forces of nature and the human condition? Or are they the faded, fragmented memories of an extraordinary intervention, a history so profound it could only—
This is not the full story. The most important part is just beginning, and it changes everything we thought we knew.
be preserved as myth? The search for our beginnings is a journey into shadow and speculation, a quest where the line between gods and men, between myth and memory, may be the most profound mystery of all. In the ancient heart of southern Africa, the very bedrock whispers a story that began between 3.5 and 3.2 billion years ago. This is a landscape forged in primordial fire, a geological treasury known to humankind for millennia. Its secret and its curse is gold. Veins of the precious metal run history is inextricably linked to this ancient, glittering prize. Proponents of this narrative speak of the Anunnaki, a supposed race of extraterrestrial beings who descended from the heavens. According to the texts that form the basis of this theory, they were drawn to Earth not by a desire for conquest, but by a desperate need for its resources. Their target was this very region, a geological anomaly rich with the one element they required above all others: gold. The theory posits that they established vast and sophisticated mining operations, delving
Most people stop watching right here, but if you continue, you'll discover something almost no one knows.
deep into the African earth. These were not the diminutive, green-skinned creatures of popular fiction. The beings described in these accounts were strikingly familiar, tall, humanoid, and cast in an image almost indistinguishable from our own. They were architects of a grand industrial project on a planetary scale. The ancient mines that litter this landscape, some impossibly old, are presented as evidence of their handiwork. One such site, the Ngwenya mine in modern-day Eswatini, is officially recognized as one of the oldest mines on Earth. Archaeological evidence confirms that primitive mining activities took place here more than 43,000 years ago, long before the accepted dawn of organized civilization. For theorists, such a profound antiquity points not to early humans, but to their powerful, off-world predecessors. Initially, it is said, the Anunnaki themselves undertook the colossal task. Armed with technologies far beyond our comprehension, these celestial beings toiled in the planet's depths. They were physically capable, intellectually superior, and yet they were not gods. The reality of the work soon became a crushing burden. Mining is a brutal, unforgiving process, and despite their advanced abilities, the relentless labor and hazardous conditions began to take their toll. The dust, the darkness, and the sheer physical strain of extracting gold from stubborn rock proved a formidable challenge, even for them. Faced with a crisis in their mission-critical operation, the Anunnaki leadership sought a solution. Their heap pits, intricate engines of extraction designed to perform the work with tireless precision. But the Earth is a chaotic and unpredictable environment. These machines, however sophisticated, would have required constant maintenance and lacked the crucial adaptability to navigate the ever-changing complexities of a subterranean world. Another alternative might have been to import a labor force, perhaps from their own homeworld or from other colonized planets. But the sheer scale of the operation, spanning millennia and demanding millions of man-hours, would have made such a logistical feat unsustainable. The tyranny of interstellar distance and the unrelenting demand for gold rendered this approach impractical. The Anunnaki needed a workforce that was self-sufficient, resilient, and native to the very planet they were exploiting. Before arriving at their final, fateful decision, they may have engaged in a series of biological trials. The theory suggests they experimented with Earth's native species, attempting to genetically enhance primitive life forms to create a class of biological workers. These early experiments may have been failures, producing monstrous amalgamations, hybrid beings that were strong but uncontrollable, creatures whose distorted memory survives today in our darkest myths and legends of chimeras and half-human beasts. Ultimately, these failed attempts led them to a radical and definitive solution: to engineer a new species entirely. They would create a worker intelligent enough to understand complex commands, yet docile enough to accept a life of servitude. This endeavor, known in the theoretical texts as the Adamu experiment, was a watershed moment. The Anunnaki allegedly took the most advanced hominid on the planet and combined its genetic material with their own. Through a deliberate and calculated act of genetic engineering, they bridged the evolutionary gap. In this fateful genetic splice, a new being was born, a hybrid of terrestrial primate and celestial visitor, Homo sapiens. We were conceived not in a primordial garden by a benevolent god, but in a laboratory as a solution to an industrial problem. Our purpose, our very reason for being, was to toil in the mines, to lift the burden from our creators, and to harvest the gold of the earth. Our genesis, in this telling, is not a story of divine love, but one of cosmic labor. Within the intricate double helix of our DNA, a story is encoded, a history far more ancient and alien than we have ever been led to believe. The startling resemblance we bear to certain depictions of ancient deities is no mere coincidence. It is a biological inheritance, a genetic echo of our very creators. According to controversial interpretations of Sumerian texts, we were fashioned in their image because we carry their essence within ourselves. The genesis of this profound intervention was not divine benevolence, but cosmic necessity. The Anunnaki, visitors from beyond our solar system, arrived on Earth with a desperate agenda. Their own world was dying, its atmosphere failing, and their only hope for survival was a rare and precious element: gold. Not for ornamentation or wealth, but for an atmospheric shield, a fine powder to be dispersed into their skies to heal a planetary wound. But the extraction of this metal was a monumental undertaking, demanding a labor force capable of performing the back-breaking, soul-crushing monotony of mining on a global scale. They required a new kind of being, a biological machine engineered for a singular purpose. The specifications were precise. The Anunnaki sought a species with a consciousness sophisticated enough to comprehend complex instructions and execute multi-stage tasks, yet fundamentally docile, its spirit tempered to ensure subservience. They envisioned a fusion, blending their own advanced genetic code with that of the most promising native species, the early hominids who roamed this primitive world. The objective was to forge a creature that possessed the raw physical endurance and environmental adaptability of an Earth native, combined with the elevated intelligence and latent potential of the Anunnaki themselves. This grand and terrifying experiment would be known as the creation of the Adamu. In this narrative, the first humans, a male and a female prototype, were not born of dust and divine breath in a tranquil garden, but were assembled in a laboratory as the progenitors of a worker race. The term Adamu resonates through the millennia, found etched into Sumerian clay tablets, where it refers to the first man brought into existence by the chief scientist Enki and the lead medical officer Nen Horsag. In this translation, these are not gods in the mythological sense, but master geneticists. their celestial titles masking their true roles in a project that would forever alter the destiny of a planet. The path to success was paved with gruesome failures. The initial experiments were a chaotic exploration of
This is not the full story. The most important part is just beginning, and it changes everything we thought we knew.
biological possibility. Anunnaki DNA was spliced with that of various terrestrial creatures, a process of brutal trial and error. The results were monstrous aberrations, beings that were physically powerful but lacked the necessary intellect, or creatures of keen awareness trapped in frail bodies. Many were unstable hybrids, unable to survive, their grotesque forms a testament to the immense difficulty of bridging the genetic chasm between two different worlds. Yet, the requirements for the final product remained absolute. The workers needed the strength and stamina for ceaseless labor in harsh conditions. They had to be adaptable, capable of learning new skills as the vast mining operations expanded. Critically, to create a self-sustaining workforce and free the Anunnaki from the constant burden of creation, these beings had to reproduce naturally. But woven through all these desired traits was the non-negotiable imperative of obedience. Intelligence was a tool to be wielded, not a spark for rebellion. After countless attempts, Enki and Ninhursag achieved their breakthrough. Through a meticulous process of gene splicing, they successfully integrated the key sequences of Anunnaki DNA into the genome of Homo erectus. This was not a simple merger, but a targeted upgrade, introducing advanced cognitive functions and enhancing physical capabilities, elevating the primitive hominid to a new state of being. The Adamu were born. Once the first viable humans were created, they were not set free. They were indoctrinated. They underwent rigorous training, their newly expanded minds conditioned to understand the language of their masters and the specific tasks of mining, construction, and agriculture. They were taught to serve. This account forces us to confront a disquieting possibility. If our origins are not rooted in divine love, but in an ancient labor contract, what does that mean for our species? Are the hierarchies, the conflicts, and the ceaseless toil that define our civilizations merely an echo of our engineered purpose? Perhaps our innate desire to reach for the stars is not a poetic ambition, but a deeply buried genetic memory, a subconscious yearning to look upon the faces of the architects who designed us for the earth, but never intended for us to claim it as our own. In the silent laboratories of a forgotten dawn, a new form of life was being sculpted, not in the image of its creators, but for their purpose. Within the very helix of its design, within the nascent code of this new being, were carefully woven threads of obedience. Traits promoting loyalty and a deep-seated subservience were not afterthoughts, but foundational pillars. This was a genetic architecture of compliance, ensuring the creation would perform its duties with unparalleled efficiency, yet never dream of challenging the authority of the gods who walked among them. The being they engineered was us. The grand narrative posits a cosmic imperative, a crisis on a distant world that reached across the void to touch our own. These ancient extraterrestrial beings, the Anunnaki, had journeyed from a rogue planet, Nibiru. Their world was dying, its atmosphere bleeding into space, and only one element, a metal of unique properties, could save it: gold. Not as a currency, but as a life-sustaining atmospheric shield. And Earth was the quarry, a planetary vault rich with the very resource they desperately required. They had the technology to travel between stars, but the sheer scale of the task before them was geological, monumental. One might assume that a civilization capable of interstellar flight could simply strip a planet of its resources. But the Earth's crust is a complex, stubborn fortress. The gold was not lying on the surface. It was locked deep within intricate geological formations, a glittering prize embedded.
If you think you've seen everything, wait. What comes next will turn everything upside down.
In billions of tons of rock. Even for the Anunnaki, rapid brute force extraction would have been an impractical, perhaps even impossible endeavor. They required a different solution, a long-term strategy, measured not in years but in millennia, a plan of immense patience and chilling ingenuity. They chose to sow a seed rather than plunder a field. By creating a workforce, a species intelligent enough to understand the task but engineered to obey, they established a self-sustaining system. They did not need to manage the daily operations of a global mining project. They simply needed to provide the initial impetus, the basic knowledge and skills for extraction, and then let the inherent nature of their creation run its course. They built a biological engine, wound it up, and let it go. Humanity, driven by the very economic and cultural incentives they had been programmed to develop, would continue the great work. Our societies, our empires, our religions, all would, in some way, orbit this singular, gleaming obsession. The Anunnaki understood that a species motivated by its own perceived desires is a far more effective tool than one ruled by fear. We built economies around gold, fought wars over it, adorned our kings and our gods with it, all the while believing these compulsions were our own. We were, in essence, accumulating the resource for them, a slow, methodical harvest unfolding over thousands of years of human history. This approach ensured a steady, ever-growing supply, allowing the Anunnaki to are gathered. This theory casts a long, unsettling shadow into our present day, suggesting the harvest never truly ended. It raises a disturbing question. What if the collection is still underway, hidden in the most secure and powerful institutions on Earth? Governments across the globe hold staggering gold reserves. We are told these glittering stockpiles, buried deep in subterranean vaults, are the bedrock of financial stability, the ultimate security for national economies. But what if their true purpose is far more ancient? Consider the mechanisms of collection: gold taxes, state-sponsored purchasing programs, and, most tellingly, outright confiscation during times of crisis. These are not abstract concepts. They are historical facts. In the year 1933, at the height of the Great Depression, the United States government enacted Executive Order 6102. This decree made it illegal for private citizens to own gold bullion, forcing them to turn it over to the Federal Reserve. Officially, it was a measure to stabilize a failing economy. But within this alternative framework, such an event is recast not as economic policy, but as a clandestine gathering of the tithe. A moment where the mask slipped, revealing a broader, long-term plan to consolidate the planet's gold for a purpose we are not meant to understand. This line of thought leads to an even more profound conspiracy: the existence of secret agreements, pacts made between world leaders and these unseen Anunnaki. A silent understanding that a portion of the world's wealth, a tribute of gold, must be set aside for the periodic return of our creators. The world's treasuries, from Fort Knox to the Bank of England, are not just vaults. They are granaries, holding the accumulated payment for a debt we never knew we owed. If this cosmic ledger truly exists, then our entire civilization is built upon a borrowed foundation. Our relentless pursuit of wealth, our reverence for a soft, yellow metal, our history of toil and conquest, all of it may be nothing more than the fulfillment of an ancient labor contract. We gaze at the stars, searching for our origins and our destiny, never suspecting that the true meaning of our existence might be found in the dust beneath our feet, in a value system engineered into our very soul. We remain the faithful keepers of a treasure we do not own, endlessly mining the earth, waiting for masters we have long since forgotten. Beneath the polished marble of global finance, an unseen current directs the flow of a single ancient metal: gold. Its value, we are told, is a bastion against volatility, a universal standard of wealth. But what if this system, meticulously managed by the world's most powerful central banks, serves a purpose far older and more profound than mere economics? What if it is part of an unspoken pact, an interstellar tribute ensuring that sufficient quantities of refined gold are perpetually available for beings not of this world? This is a narrative that begins not in a vault, but on clay tablets baked under the Mesopotamian sun thousands of years ago. In the Fertile Crescent, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerian people etched their history and their cosmology into cuneiform script. They spoke of the Anunnaki, a name that translates as those who from heaven to earth came. These were not ethereal spirits or abstract deities. They were described as powerful physical beings who descended from the heavens in celestial chariots, possessing knowledge that would irrevocably alter the course of human history. According to these foundational texts, the Anunnaki were the progeny of a cosmic union between An, the distant Skyfather, and Ki, the nurturing Earth Mother. Their pantheon was complex. A celestial family of architects Ned the first humans, and his half-brother Enlil, the formidable lord of wind and command, who governed the earth with a stern hand. They were the divine mediators, the bridge between the celestial realm and the fragile, burgeoning domain of humanity. The Sumerian record is remarkably specific. It names the very first settlement established by these star-faring visitors, Eridu. Archaeologically, Eridu is no myth. It is recognized as one of the oldest, if not the oldest, city on the planet. It is here in this ancient place that the cornerstones of civilization, complex urbanization, state-level governance, and, most critically, the invention of written language, seem to explode into existence with startling suddenness. The Anunnaki, the tablets claim, were the teachers. They bestowed upon a primitive humanity the blueprints for society, the secrets of agriculture, the principles of law, the mathematics of architecture, and the art of writing itself. They are credited with catalyzing the Great Leap, transforming scattered hunter-gatherer tribes into the world's first settled agricultural communities. And so, we stand at a crossroads of interpretation. Are these accounts merely elaborate mythological constructs, a pre-scientific people's attempt to explain their own sudden cognitive and cultural awakening? Are the Anunnaki simply the allegorical scaffolding upon which the Sumerians built their understanding of the world? Or could these texts be something far more literal? Could they be a preserved memory, a faint echo of an extraordinary encounter, documented through the only lens available to early humans, the language of gods and legends? Is it possible we are reading the fragmented logbook of humanity's first interaction with an extraterrestrial intelligence? The question deepens when we realize the ripples of this narrative extend far beyond the boundaries of Sumer. The story of powerful beings descending from the sky to guide and create humanity is not unique to Mesopotamia. It is a foundational theme, a recurring motif woven into the sacred tapestries of ancient cultures across the globe. In the Nile Valley, the divine pantheon of Ifor passing the mantle of civilization to mortal pharaohs. Across the Atlantic, the peoples of Mesoamerica revered Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a light-skinned, bearded deity who arrived from the heavens to deliver advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and ethics. In the high plains of the Andes, Viracocha was said to have emerged from Lake Titicaca, a civilizing god who created humanity and taught them the arts before walking across the water into the west, promising to one day return. Even in West Africa, the Dogon people possess a startlingly complex astronomical knowledge, including the existence of a companion star to Sirius, invisible to the naked eye, which they claim was imparted to them by amphibious beings, the Namo, who descended from that very star system in a great arc. Under different names, titles, and representations, the core narrative remains eerily consistent. Humanity did not climb from the mud alone. We were guided, we were taught, we were, perhaps, engineered. The myths of our ancestors may not be just stories. They may be a collective planetary memory of our true genesis, a history so profound and unsettling that it could only be preserved in the sacred language of the divine. And if that history is true, then our modern world, with its intricate systems and its quiet, relentless accumulation of gold, may be operating on a logic far older and vaster than we could ever imagine. Our destiny may still be tied to the very beings who first set it in motion. Along the fertile banks of the Nile, a civilization arose that would defy the ages. The ancient Egyptians believed their world was forged by gods who descended from the heavens, bringing order from chaos. Among them was Thoth, the ibis-headed deity of wisdom. It was he, their sacred texts attest, who gifted humanity the foundational tools of civilization, the intricate art of writing, the celestial precision of mathematics, and the monumental principles of architecture. This concept of a divine tutor, a bringer of knowledge from beyond, echoes a narrative found in the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, where the Sumerians spoke.
Most people stop watching right here. But if you continue, you'll discover something almost no one knows. If you think you've seen everything, wait. What comes next will turn everything upside down.
Constructs, a pre-scientific people's attempt to explain their own sudden cognitive and cultural awakening? Are the Anunnaki simply the allegorical scaffolding upon which the Sumerians built their understanding of the world? Or could these texts be something far more literal? Could they be a preserved memory, a faint echo of an extraordinary encounter, documented through the only lens available to early humans, the language of gods and legends? Is it possible we are reading the fragmented logbook of humanity's first interaction with an extraterrestrial intelligence? The question deepens when we realize the ripples of this narrative extend far beyond the boundaries of Sumer. The story of powerful beings descending from the sky to guide and create humanity is not unique to Mesopotamia. It is a foundational theme, a recurring motif woven into the sacred tapestries of ancient cultures across the globe. In the Nile Valley, the divine pantheon of Ifor passing the mantle of civilization to mortal pharaohs. Across the Atlantic, the peoples of Mesoamerica revered Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a light-skinned, bearded deity who arrived from the heavens to deliver advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and ethics. In the high plains of the Andes, Viracocha was said to have emerged from Lake Titicaca, a civilizing god who created humanity and taught them the arts before walking across the water into the west, promising to one day return. Even in West Africa, the Dogon people possess a startlingly complex astronomical knowledge, including the existence of a companion star to Sirius, invisible to the naked eye, which they claim was imparted to them by amphibious beings, the Namo, who descended from that very star system in a great arc. Under different names, titles, and representations, the core narrative remains eerily consistent. Humanity did not climb from the mud alone. We were guided, we were taught, we were, perhaps, engineered. The myths of our ancestors may not be just stories. They may be a collective planetary memory of our true genesis, a history so profound and unsettling that it could only be preserved in the sacred language of the divine. And if that history is true, then our modern world, with its intricate systems and its quiet, relentless accumulation of gold, may be operating on a logic far older and vaster than we could ever imagine. Our destiny may still be tied to the very beings who first set it in motion. Along the fertile banks of the Nile, a civilization arose that would defy the ages. The ancient Egyptians believed their world was forged by gods who descended from the heavens, bringing order from chaos. Among them was Thoth, the ibis-headed deity of wisdom. It was he, their sacred texts attest, who gifted humanity the foundational tools of civilization, the intricate art of writing, the celestial precision of mathematics, and the monumental principles of architecture. This concept of a divine tutor, a bringer of knowledge from beyond, echoes a narrative found in the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, where the Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki. This was not a belief confined to a single dynasty or empire. When the Sumerian culture was absorbed by their neighbors, the Akkadians, the story persisted. The divine beings were given a new name, the Igorg, but their role remained unchanged, powerful entities from above, shaping the destiny.
Most people stop watching right here. But if you continue, you'll discover something almost no one knows.
Of those below. A pattern was beginning to form, etched into the clay tablets and papyrus scrolls of the ancient Near East. Half a world away, across a vast and unknown ocean, beneath the jungle canopy of Mesoamerica, the Maya worshipped Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. This was no mere animal god, but a creator deity who descended from the sky to bestow knowledge upon his people, the secrets of the calendar, the wisdom of the stars, and the foundations of their society. To the north, among the formidable Aztecs, this same being was revered as Quetzalcoatl, a name that carried the same profound meaning, a bridge between the celestial and the terrestrial, a divine teacher who promised to one day return. The thread continues, weaving its way into the Indian subcontinent. The ancient Sanskrit texts of the Vedas, among the oldest spiritual scriptures in the world, speak of the Devas. These luminous beings did not remain aloof. They descended to earth, walked among mortals, fought in their wars, and, most remarkably, interbred with them. This account of divine human interaction, of a blending of lineages, is a striking parallel to the Sumerian tales of the Anunnaki taking human partners to create a new hybrid race. Even in the philosophical heart of the West, the theme resonates. In Greece, the gods were said to dwell upon the mist-shrouded peak of Mount Olympus, yet they were constantly drawn to the mortal world below. They descended to meddle, to guide, and to love, their unions with humans giving birth to the demigods and heroes who populate their greatest epics: Heracles, Perseus, Achilles. These figures were defined by their dual nature, born of both human frailty and divine fire, a concept that mirrors, once more, the Anunnaki legacy. From the celestial dragons of Chinese lore, who imparted wisdom to the earliest emperors, to the Norse gods of Asgard, who walked the frozen earth of Midgard, a global echo emerges. A bewildering question hangs in the air, a question that challenges our understanding of the past. Are these uncanny resemblances, scattered across disparate cultures, separated by impassable oceans and millennia of time, mere coincidence? Are they simply the product of a shared human impulse, what the psychologist Carl Jung would call an archetype? A universal symbol bubbling up from the depths of a collective unconscious? Is it our innate fear of the unknown and our desire for meaning that leads us to invent divine patrons in the sky? Or could these stories point towards something else, a common, ancient, and global influence, a forgotten chapter in the human story, a time when sky beings did, in fact, weave themselves into the tapestry of our emerging civilization? As we dig deeper, we tread the fine line between myth and memory, between archaeology and the astonishing possibility of an encounter that set humanity on its current course. The tales are universal, not because our minds are the same, but because our distant ancestors may have witnessed the same incredible event. Whether these gods were born of starlight or of the intricate wiring of the human brain, their legacy is undeniable. It is carved into the megaliths that watch the solstices, written in the sacred texts that guide billions, and whispered in the myths that still give us a sense of our place in the cosmos. They represent a fundamental truth about our species, our unyielding gaze towards the heavens, forever searching for answers, for origins, and for the meaning of our own brief, brilliant existence. Across the cradle of civilization, a single, persistent story echoes through time. It is a narrative of beings who descended from the heavens, wise, powerful, and bearing gifts of knowledge that would ignite the very dawn of human culture. But what if these were not myths at all? What if they were memories, fragmented and distorted by the millennia? One audacious explanation, drawing upon the theories of the Swiss author Erich von Däniken, proposes that these accounts are not symbolic allegories, but literal descriptions of an encounter. He contends that the celestial beings who walked among our distant progenitors were, in fact, technologically advanced biological entities from another world. In this view, the shimmering chariots of the gods were space.
And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real mystery begins. Welcome to my channel. If you're fascinated by hidden truths, lost civilizations, and unsolved mysteries, you're in the right place. Make sure
and for the meaning of our own brief, brilliant existence. Across the cradle of civilization, a single persistent story echoes through time. It is a narrative of beings who descended from the heavens, wise, powerful, and bearing gifts of knowledge that would ignite the very dawn of human culture. But what if these were not myths at all? What if they were memories, fragmented and distorted by the millennia? One audacious explanation, drawing upon the theories of the Swiss author Erich von Däniken, proposes that these accounts are not symbolic allegories, but literal descriptions of an encounter. He contends that the celestial beings who walked among our distant progenitors were, in fact, technologically advanced biological entities from another world. In this view, the shimmering chariots of the gods were spacecraft, their divine powers, the products of a science so advanced it was indistinguishable from magic to the nascent human mind. Our ancestors, confronted with such overwhelming superiority, did the only thing they could. They fell to their knees and worshipped. The sheer ubiquity of this narrative presents a profound puzzle. From the sky woman of the Iroquois to the feathered serpent Kukulkan of the Maya, the motif of the sky teacher is a global phenomenon. This could mean that the archetype is so fundamental to the human psyche, so universally relevant, that it arose spontaneously and independently in countless cultures. Or it suggests a far more startling alternative, that ancient civilizations were more interconnected than our orthodox histories allow, part of a forgotten global network that shared stories, myths, and perhaps even a common world-altering experience across vast, unforgiving distances. Yet another lens, offered by the field of astroarchaeology, pulls our gaze back to the heavens, suggesting a more terrestrial origin for these divine figures. This perspective posits that the stories represent humanity's earliest attempts to comprehend and document the cosmos. The celestial beings, in this light, become brilliant personifications of the planets marching across the ecliptic, of the constellations wheeling through the seasons, of terrifying and beautifies. But of all the threads woven into this ancient tapestry, one pulls with an almost irresistible force, aligning with the detailed chronicles of the ancient Sumerians. Their texts do not speak in vague metaphor. They narrate a history of advanced entities who did not merely inspire, but who directly intervened in the trajectory of human development. They were beings who taught humanity the revolutionary arts of agriculture, the precise sciences of architecture and astronomy, the complexities of written language, and the very structures of social organization. To entertain such a staggering possibility is to walk a fine line between open-minded inquiry and uncritical belief. Each viewpoint offers a different filter through which to view these foundational narratives, and the path forward demands not a leap of faith, but the meticulous discipline of the investigator, scrutinizing the evidence, evaluating its validity, and understanding its profound context. The question is, which lens brings the truth into the sharpest focus? And are we prepared for what we might see? The first and most crucial body of evidence lies with the Sumerian texts themselves. These are not grand monuments of stone, but humble tablets of baked clay, etched with the wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform, one of the earliest known systems of writing. Resurrecting this silent language is a monumental task of scholarship, and its translation is less a science than an art, fraught with ambiguity and the potential for misinterpretation. It is entirely possible that our modern reading of the Anunnaki and their deeds is a projection of our own technological age onto the poetry of the past. This interpretive chasm is exemplified by the work of Zecharia Sitchin, an author whose popular translations brought the Sumerian accounts to a global audience. Sitchin proposed that the Anunnaki were astronauts from a yet undiscovered planet in our own solar system, which he called Nibiru. His narrative is compelling and detailed. Yet, for every proponent of this literal reading, a chorus of academic dissent rises. Mainstream scholars contest his interpretations, suggesting he read too literally into the rich symbolism and complex metaphors of the text, mistaking celestial poetry for historical fact and mythic allegory for an engineering schematic. The challenge extends beyond the written word, embedding itself in the very soil of archaeology, where physical evidence can be just as tantalizing and just as ambiguous. We are left standing at a crossroads of interpretation, faced with a profound choice. Do we see these stories as the magnificent products of human imagination, our ancestors' way of explaining the world and their place within it? Or do we dare to consider them as the faint, lingering echo of a forgotten chapter in human history, a history in which we were not alone? The question is not simply what the texts say, but what we are prepared to hear. For in our relentless search for the gods of our ancestors, we may ultimately find only a reflection of ourselves, our fears, our hopes, and our profound, unending desire to know where we came from. Across the silent expanse of our planet's history, colossal structures reach for the heavens, their origins shrouded in the mists of time. On the Giza Plateau, megalithic blocks, weighing tens of tons, are fitted with a precision that defies modern explanation. In the desolate plains of Peru, vast geoglyphs, visible only from the sky, sketch enigmatic figures across the landscape. For generations, these have been hailed as the ultimate monuments to human potential, the product of sheer will, ingenuity, and millennia of accumulated knowledge. This conventional view holds that our ancestors, armed with little more than rudimentary tools and an unyielding spirit, carved empires from stone and wilderness. Archaeologists painstakingly reconstruct the methods, the ramps, the levers, the sheer manpower that could have raised the pyramids and etched the Nazca lines. They see not a mystery, but a testament to a species capable of achieving the impossible. Yet, a persistent counter-narrative whispers from the margins of history. It asks if human ingenuity is the only force at play. This alternative theory points to the same stones, the same lines in the sand, and sees not the sweat of human brows, but the guiding hand of an intelligence far beyond our own. It posits that the technological leaps required for these accomplishments were too sudden, too profound, to have occurred in isolation. They were, perhaps, a gift. This schism extends from the physical world into the realm of myth. From the Americas to Australia, ancient cultures tell remarkably similar stories of powerful beings descending from the sky. They are the bringers of fire, the teachers of agriculture, the lawgivers who established the foundations of civilization. The common explanation for this global echo lies in the shared architecture of the human mind, archetypal narratives born from universal fears, hopes, and our primal need to explain the thunder and the stars. But what if we allow ourselves to suspend disbelief for a moment? What if these myths are not merely allegories, but fragmented memories of a genuine historical event? In the sun-baked earth of ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians etched their history onto clay tablets. They wrote of the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. These were not abstract, ethereal gods, but tangible deities who walked among humans, instructing them in the arts of civilization. They brought law, architecture, the secrets of the cosmos, and the complex structure of organized society. Viewed through the lens of this ancient astronaut hypothesis, the narrative transforms. The gods become advanced extraterrestrial visitors. The gifts of civilization become a deliberate transfer of knowledge and technology. This interpretation finds fertile ground in the timeline of Sumer itself. The region witnessed a breathtakingly abrupt transformation, a quantum leap from scattered hunter-gatherer societies to sprawling city-states complete with sophisticated agriculture, a complex bureaucracy, and the invention of writing. Could such a sudden, explosive flowering of culture have been entirely self-generated, or was it ignited by an external spark? If we entertain this possibility, the implications ripple across the globe, challenging the very bedrock of anthropology. The long-held theory of parallel evolution, the idea that disparate cultures independently developed similar technologies and beliefs, begins to fracture. It suggests a far more interconnected ancient world than we have ever dared to imagine. Consider the pyramid. These monumental structures, triangular gateways to the heavens, appear not only in Egypt but also among the Mayan and Aztec civilizations, separated by thousands of miles of ocean and thousands of years of history. Are we to believe that these cultures, with no known contact, independently conceived of and engineered such specific and astrologically aligned edifices? Or does this shared architectural signature point to a common, forgotten teacher, a single source of knowledge that sowed the seeds of wisdom across the continents? The question forces us to confront the foundations of our own identity. It challenges our place in the universe. Are we the solitary masters of this world, a species that clawed its way to consciousness through its own struggles and triumphs? Or are we part of a much larger cosmic story, the inheritors of a legacy bestowed upon us in the dawn of our existence, a history that is not entirely our own? The answer remains buried, waiting to be unearthed not just from the sands of desert planets, but from the deepest recesses of our collective past. In the crucible of the ancient Near East, where M300 BCE, the peoples known as the Hurrians began to carve their destiny into the landscapes of modern-day Syria, Turkey, and Iraq. For a millennium, their influence would radiate outwards, a cultural bedrock for the great powers to come. They left behind a unique, non-Semitic language, monumental architecture that defied the ages, and captivating art that spoke of a complex inner world. Their power was not centralized, but expressed through a constellation of city-states and kingdoms, each a vibrant center of Hurrian life. At the zenith of their influence, during the tumultuous second millennium BCE, one Hurrian state would achieve true imperial status, the Kingdom of Mitanni. Between 1500 and 1300 BCE, Mitanni was a chariot empire, a formidable power whose reach extended across northern Mesopotamia, challenging the pharaohs of Egypt and the kings of Babylon for dominance. Their story, however, was not to be written in isolation. For in the shadow of these established powers, a new force was rising on the Anatolian plateau. They were the Hittites, an Indo-European people who descended into what is now Turkey, establishing a formidable empire that would redefine the political map. Thriving throughout the same second millennium, the Hittites were a civilization forged in discipline and innovation. They were renowned for their military prowess, their charioteers becoming the terror of the Bronze Age battlefield. Their society was governed by an advanced legal system, and at its heart lay the impressive capital of Hattusa, a fortress city carved into the rocky highlands, its cyclopean walls a testament to their ambition. Under the mast its apex, standing as an equal to the ancient dynasties of the Nile and the Euphrates. Inevitably, the worlds of the Hurrians and the Hittites collided. Theirs was an intricate relationship, a complex tapestry woven with threads of commerce, diplomacy, and open conflict. They exchanged goods, technologies, and ideas. Yet despite their differing origins and languages, a strange and profound cultural bleed began to occur. Shared artistic motifs, religious practices, and mythological elements started to appear, binding these two distinct civilizations in a mysterious embrace. It is this shared spiritual landscape that has sparked the intense curiosity of historians, a puzzle that may point towards an even older, more foundational source of belief. At the heart of this enigma is their shared pantheon of gods. As we delve into the religious texts of the Hurrians and Hittites, the divine figures begin to overlap, their narratives echoing one another with startling clarity. This common ground has prompted scholars to look further back into the foundational myths of Mesopotamia and to a group of deities known as the Anunnaki. In Sumerian cosmology, the Anunnaki were the great pantheon, the children of the sky god Anu and his consort Ki. They were not distant, abstract beings, but active participants in the cosmic drama, credited with shaping human civilization itself, bestowing upon mortals the gifts of knowledge, kingship, and technology. The theory that has emerged is one of profound cultural transmission. Many of the primary deities worshipped by the Hurrians and, subsequently, the Hittites bear an uncanny resemblance in both form and function to the great Anunnaki gods of Sumer and Akkad. The connection is too specific to be mere coincidence. One of the most striking examples is the supreme deity of the Hurrian pantheon, the mighty storm god, Teshub. Wielder of the thunderbolt and the axe, bringer of life-giving rain and devastating floods, he is a mirror image of the Mesopotamian storm god, Adad, or Hadad, a prominent Anunnaki deity. When the Hittites absorbed Hurrian culture, they too adopted this powerful archetype, naming him Tarhunt or Tarhuna, yet his essential characteristics remained unchanged. These parallels are not isolated. They suggest a powerful current of belief flowing through these cultures, an indication that the religious framework of ancient Mesopotamia was not contained by its borders. The Hurrians, situated as a geographic and cultural bridge, appear to have acted as conduits. They absorbed the ancient Sumerian myths, the epic tales of creation, flood, and divine conflict, and adapted them into their own religious canon. This adapted faith was then passed westward, becoming deeply embedded within the Hittite Empire. What this reveals is not merely a story of two civilizations, but a glimpse into the very process by which ideas, gods, and foundational myths are inherited, transformed, and passed across the generations. The names of the gods may change, the languages may fall silent, but the human need to see a face in the storm, a purpose in the heavens, remains an eternal echo from our most distant past. In the windswept highlands of Anatolia, ancient storytellers spoke of Kamabi. It was a cosmic drama, a tale of divine succession where gods overthrew their fathers in a primordial struggle for control of the heavens. Yet this story was not born in the Hittite heartland. It was an echo, a careful adaptation of a Hurrian myth, which itself was a distant reverberation of the Sumerian epic of Enlil and Ninlil. A single story passed through empires, changing its tongue but never its terrifying celestial theme. This transmission was no accident. The Hittite Empire, a vast cultural crucible forged in conquest, did not merely vanquish its neighbors, it absorbed them. Their pantheon became a living archive of conquered peoples, a testament to a policy of assimilation where foreign gods were not erased but...
And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real mystery... And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real mystery begins.
Monumental architecture that defied the ages, and captivating art that spoke of a complex inner world. Their power was not centralized, but expressed through a constellation of city-states and kingdoms, each a vibrant center of Hurrian life. At the zenith of their influence, during the tumultuous second millennium BCE, one Hurrian state would achieve true imperial status, the Kingdom of Mitanni. Between 1500 and 1300 BCE, Mitanni was a chariot empire, a formidable power whose reach extended across northern Mesopotamia, challenging the pharaohs of Egypt and the kings of Babylon for dominance. Their story, however, was not to be written in isolation. For in the shadow of these established powers, a new force was rising on the Anatolian plateau. They were the Hittites, an Indo-European people who descended into what is now Turkey, establishing a formidable empire that would redefine the political map. Thriving throughout the same second millennium, the Hittites were a civilization forged in discipline and innovation. They were renowned for their military prowess, their charioteers becoming the terror of the Bronze Age battlefield. Their society was governed by an advanced legal system, and at its heart lay the impressive capital of Hattusa, a fortress city carved into the rocky highlands, its cyclopean walls a testament to their ambition. Under the mast its apex, standing as an equal to the ancient dynasties of the Nile and the Euphrates. Inevitably, the worlds of the Hurrians and the Hittites collided. Theirs was an intricate relationship, a complex tapestry woven with threads of commerce, diplomacy, and open conflict. They exchanged goods, technologies, and ideas. Yet despite their differing origins and languages, a strange and profound cultural bleed began to occur. Shared artistic motifs, religious practices, and mythological elements started to appear, binding these two distinct civilizations in a mysterious embrace. It is this shared spiritual landscape that has sparked the intense curiosity of historians, a puzzle that may point towards an even older, more foundational source of belief. At the heart of this enigma is their shared pantheon of gods. As we delve into the religious texts of the Hurrians and Hittites, the divine figures begin to overlap, their narratives echoing one another with startling clarity. This common ground has prompted scholars to look further back into the foundational myths of Mesopotamia and to a group of deities known as the Anunnaki. In Sumerian cosmology, the Anunnaki were the great pantheon, the children of the sky god Anu and his consort Ki. They were not distant, abstract beings, but active participants in the cosmic drama, credited with shaping human civilization itself, bestowing upon mortals the gifts of knowledge, kingship, and technology. The theory that has emerged is one of profound cultural transmission. Many of the primary deities worshipped by the Hurrians and, subsequently, the Hittites bear an uncanny resemblance in both form and function to the great Anunnaki gods of Sumer and Akkad. The connection is too specific to be mere coincidence. One of the most striking examples is the supreme deity of the Hurrian pantheon, the mighty storm god, Teshub. Wielder of the thunderbolt and the axe, bringer of life-giving rain and devastating floods, he is a mirror image of the Mesopotamian storm god, Adad, or Hadad, a prominent Anunnaki deity. When the Hittites absorbed Hurrian culture, they too adopted this powerful archetype, naming him Tarhunt or Tarhuna. Yet his essential characteristics remained unchanged. These parallels are not isolated. They suggest a powerful current of belief flowing through these cultures, an indication that the religious framework of ancient Mesopotamia was not contained by its borders. The Hurrians, situated as a geographic and cultural bridge, appear to have acted as conduits. They absorbed the ancient Sumerian myths, the epic tales of creation, flood, and divine conflict, and adapted them into their own religious canon. This adapted faith was then passed westward, becoming deeply embedded within the Hittite Empire. What this reveals is not merely a story of two civilizations, but a glimpse into the very process by which ideas, gods, and foundational myths are inherited, transformed, and passed across the generations. The names of the gods may change, the languages may fall silent, but the human need to see a face in the storm, a purpose in the heavens, remains an eternal echo from our most distant past. In the windswept highlands of Anatolia, ancient storytellers spoke of Kamabi. It was a cosmic drama, a tale of divine succession where gods overthrew their fathers in a primordial struggle for control of the heavens. Yet this story was not born in the Hittite heartland. It was an echo, a careful adaptation of a Hurrian myth, which itself was a distant reverberation of the Sumerian epic of Enlil and Ninlil. A single story passed through empires, changing its tongue but never its terrifying celestial theme. This transmission was no accident. The Hittite Empire, a vast cultural crucible forged in conquest, did not merely vanquish its neighbors, it absorbed them. Their pantheon became a living archive of conquered peoples, a testament to a policy of assimilation where foreign gods were not erased but given a place of honor. In this great merger of faiths, the deities and myths of the Hurrians found a new, powerful home, ensuring their survival for millennia. But as we peel back the layers of these intertwined mythologies, a far more startling motif emerges: the persistent narrative of beings who descended from the heavens, walking among mortals to shape their destiny. In both Hurrian and Hittite accounts, the gods were no distant, abstract forces. They were active participants in the human drama, intervening in the courts of kings, guiding the outcomes of battles, and dictating the fate of entire nations. This theme of direct, celestial interaction finds its most profound parallel in the foundational myths of Mesopotamia, in the lore of the Anunnaki, who were said to have descended to Earth and had a direct hand in the genesis of human civilization itself. This web of shared belief hints at a period of intense cultural exchange across the ancient Near East, a time when ideas traveled as freely as caravans. But the connections run deeper than shared stories. When we examine the very framework of these societies, we uncover compelling evidence that suggests a common, perhaps revolutionary, influence on the most fundamental aspects of their world. Consider the bedrock of civilization, the law. Etched into the stone of Hittite legal codes, we find a striking reflection of an older, more famous decree, the Code of Hammurabi, the Babylonian king. Hammurabi claimed his authority came not from man, but from the heavens, that he received his laws directly from the Anunnaki god, Marduk. The Hittite laws mirror this divine blueprint with uncanny precision. Both legal systems are built upon the same tripartite structure: a majestic prologue establishing divine authority, a meticulously detailed list of statutes, and a concluding epilogue. They address the same societal pillars: property rights, contractual obligations, and punishments for transgression, with a comprehensible sense of order and gravity. The resemblance is too structured, too precise to be dismissed as mere coincidence. It suggests not just parallel development, but a shared blueprint, a common legal ancestor whose influence radiated across the region. This pattern repeats itself in the very stones of their cities. The Hurrians and Hittites were master builders, erecting monumental structures that declared their power to both mortals and the gods. Their palaces, temples, and fortified cities were feats of advanced engineering. The Hittite capital, Hattusa, stands as a silent testament to this prowess. Its cyclopean walls, punctuated by imposing gates and watchtowers, were not merely defensive but psychological. Within the city, an elaborate system of drainage and water management demonstrated a level of technical skill that was centuries ahead of its time. This sudden leap in architectural knowledge, this ability to shape the earth on such a colossal scale, raises profound questions. Some argue that such skill was not developed in isolation, but was a legacy, a body of knowledge passed down from an external, more advanced source, just as the myths claimed. From the celestial dramas of their gods to the earthly order of their laws and the monumental ambition of their architecture, the threads connecting the Hurrians, Hittites, and the Mesopotamian world of the Anunnaki are too numerous to ignore. They form a tapestry of shared knowledge, a ghost in the historical machine. We are left to wonder if these are merely the artifacts of trade and conquest, or the fading fingerprints of a forgotten chapter in human history. A time when the boundary between the divine and the mortal was not a line, but a doorway. In the windswept highlands of Anatolia, where the mighty Hittite Empire rose to challenge the pharaohs of Egypt, a sacred principle governed the world of mortals: divine kingship. The ruler was not merely a man of power, but a mortal vessel for immortal authority, the chosen shepherd of the storm god, a conduit between the heavens and the earth. This same belief permeated the culture of their predecessors and neighbors, the enigmatic Hurrians. For both civilizations, the throne was a terrestrial reflection of a divine cosmic order, a concept that legitimized every decree and sanctified every conquest. This foundational belief was not born in a vacuum. It echoes, with haunting clarity, a far older tradition from the river valleys of Mesopotamia. There, the myth spoke of the Anunnaki, the great gods who descended from the heavens to establish civilization. They were the first kings, the cosmic sovereigns who laid down the laws of existence. The earthly kings of Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon ruled only as viceroys, their authority a sacred mandate granted by these celestial beings. The practice of the Hittite.
Welcome to my channel. If you're fascinated by hidden truths, lost civilizations, and unsolved mysteries, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like so you don't miss what's coming next. Because what you're about to see will change everything.
And Hurrians, therefore, was more than political strategy. It was the continuation of a profound theological narrative that had shaped the Near East for millennia. This divine mandate was not written in stone alone, but was etched in the vast, silent tapestry of the night sky. For the Hurrians and Hittites, just as for their Mesopotamian counterparts, the cosmos was a living text, rich with meaning. A profound obsession with the celestial drove priest astronomers to scour the heavens, tracking the patient march of the planets and the sudden blaze of a comet. They developed intricate systems of divination, believing that the movements of these celestial bodies were omens, a direct form of communication from the gods. The fate of a harvest, the outcome of a battle, the very stability of the kingdom, all could be read in the silent, wheeling dance overhead. Here, too, the echoes of Sumer are undeniable, where the stars were seen as the celestial script of the Anunnaki, their will made manifest in light and shadow. To trace these echoes is to walk a fine line between established history and tantalizing theory. While definitive proof of a direct transmission remains elusive, the trail is not cold. It is carved into the very earth and clay of the ancient world, from the rulets inscribed with the wedge-shaped script of cuneiform. In the hushed archives of modern museums, scholars painstakingly piece together the myths, laws, and rituals of these lost peoples. Within these texts, they discover pantheons that seem to mirror one another, tales of storm gods battling primordial sea serpents, and creation myths that share a common, foundational structure. The clues extend beyond the written word, taking form in stone and metal. Excavations have uncovered imposing statues and intricate reliefs, artistic depictions of the divine that betray a shared cultural vocabulary. We see deities crowned with horned helmets, a potent symbol of divinity with deep and ancient roots in Mesopotamia, long associated with the Anunnaki. We find figures wielding lightning bolts and axes, their postures and attributes strikingly parallel to the great Mesopotamian storm god, Adad. Each discovery, whether a fragment of a myth or a weathered stone carving, adds another layer to the compelling possibility that the wisdom, religion, and cosmology of the Anunnaki were not confined to one land, but were part of a vast, interconnected current of knowledge that flowed across the ancient Near East. The search, therefore, is not merely for artifacts, but for the ghost of an idea, a primordial narrative so powerful it could cross mountains and deserts, surviving the rise and fall of empires. It suggests that deep in our collective past, beneath the unique identities of individual cultures, a single powerful story was being told. It was a story of gods who came from the stars, and of the kings who ruled in their name, forever binding the destiny of humanity to the mysteries of the heavens. In the dust of ancient Anatolia, startling echoes are being unearthed, lending credence to a theory that has long lingered in the shadows of history. The religious pantheons and artistic motifs of the Hurrians and the formidable Hittite Empire seem to whisper of a profound influence, that of the Anunnaki. Today, this search is no longer confined to the archaeologist's trench. Advanced technologies, from remote sensing that pierces the veil of time to ground-penetrating radar that maps cities lost to memory, are revealing a landscape of previously unknown sites. Each new discovery, each unearthed artifact, could be a missing thread in the complex web of cultural exchange that once defined the ancient Near East. Researchers now meticulously cross-reference ancient texts with these archaeological remains, seeking to establish the pathways of belief and tradition that flowed between these great civilizations. The investigation is essential, for it is not merely about one culture, but about understanding the very currents that shaped human history. While definitive proof of the Anunnaki's existence or their direct hand in the rise of the Hurrians and Hittites remains elusive, the similarities are too striking to ignore. In their shared mythologies and cultural practices, we find a fascinating window, a glimpse into a time when the line between gods and kings, between myth and memory, may have been far more blurred than we have ever imagined.